Yep, I know you're waiting with bated breath. I have with me in studio Dr. Kim Johnson. We're about to start a 2-hour segment. So I urge you to keep it locked, alright? Dr. Kim Johnson is an accomplished journalist, author, and researcher, and is recognized as the foremost Steelpan historian, I would dare say, in the world. His works are extensive, and I guess over the period of the interview, we'll get into those. But a number of books, and most of you will know him as the writer of the docudrama Pan, a music odyssey, and I think that's where I'd like to say welcome, Dr. Johnson.
Kim, please. Oh God, should I speak into this mic?
Sure, yes.
Yeah, Kim, please.
Welcome, Kim. And thank you so much for making the journey to South.
Yeah, I mean, coming down at 80 kilometers per hour is painful, huh?
I know. But, it's for our safety, right? So we do what we have to do, even on a Sunday. So, all right. There's so much that I would like us to talk about, but maybe we could start with how you got involved in documenting our Steelpan history specifically. Now, I know you're involved in all of our cultural documentation, but...
Well, it was kind of fortuitous, because I was a journalist at the Express, and my editor, who was Lennox Grant at the time, asked me to write a story about Bajans. And I thought I would do it about the Bajans I'd heard about who were associated with Tokyo. At the time, Carib Tokyo Steel Band.
Mm-hmm.
And I went up there, and they gave me a whole lot of stories. I mean, really fascinating stories. But they were only about Tokyo. And, the way people are competitive, I thought, well, look, let me do West Port of Spain to balance it.
Yeah.
So I went by Invaders, and I got a whole lot of different stories. And that made me realize that every steel band has its stories. So I came down San Fernando, and then I went Arima, and then I came back to Port of Spain. And the popular response to these articles was so enthusiastic. People saying, we want more. And it was, for me, it was not just a matter of like discovering a sort of treasure trove of stories that no one had ever tapped
into, yeah.
Ever, because up until then, I had seen 2 interviews with Pan Men. Andy Narrell did one with Ellie Barnett, and Keith Smith did one with Bertie Marshall. And that was it. And yet, I found there were hundreds upon hundreds of men. So...
with different perspectives.
With different stories.
Yeah.
And then it became, to me, also a great intellectual eye-opener, because not only was it... stories there for the storyteller, which is what the journalist can be.
Mm-hmm.
But it changed my understanding of steel band. You see, for example, if you were to write about, say, the history of jazz, you wouldn't write about an abstract thing called jazz and don't mention Louis Armstrong or Miles Davis or, any of the many John, Coltrane. But all the people who had written books and articles about steel band just spoke about an abstract thing called the steel band movement. But what I was discovering through all of these men and women is that every band made a specific and unique contribution, and certain men made specific and unique contributions. And the steel band was not the brainchild of any one person. It was a whole society of people of different races, classes, ages, genders, religions, all making small contributions or contributions of different sizes that came together. And that was like a complete intellectual breakthrough in I suppose, our cultural history. I mean, it's what I did my PhD thesis on. And I think it was a very important change in how we look at the steel band. It's like if you're writing a history of reggae and you can't tell the difference between Bob Marley and Peter Tosh and Gregory Isaacs what history is that? But people would write and they couldn't tell they wouldn't mention the difference between desperados and all stars and cavaliers.
Yeah, because in a sense, each band
brings its own
right.
And if you realize the history of steel band is not unlike reggae or jazz or so. It's first of all the history of an instrument which was invented, and then it's the history of an ensemble that was created of these instruments, and then it was the history of a music that was created for the ensemble to play. And so there are three parallel inventions, not just one, going on with different people making different contributions and different bands, and every band is like a human, is like a group. The difference between, say, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, they're different. The music is different, the feel, the audience. And yet we didn't acknowledge that until I stumbled into this. So I just continued doing it. So I did a series called Pan Pioneers, and it went on and on for quite a while. And actually a lot of it is reprinted in a collection by Pan Trimbago, a collection called If Your Iron Good, You Is King.
Yes.
Which was a collection of that journalism. So that's how I got into it, really.
Okay. But and along the way, you would have published a number of books on Steelpan history as well?
Yes, well, after I'd written quite a few of those Pan Pioneers, two people, Helen Billow and Miller Riggio, asked me to work with them on a book on renegades. So I wrote that, photographs by Jeffrey Chuck, and that was, in a sense, the first detailed study of a steel band, again, collecting the stories. And Renegades was at the time, at the peak, that's when their arranger, Jit Samaru, was winning panoramas. They had the record for panorama victories. So it was really a great time to write the first book my first book about Pan, really. And Renegades was a great topic. Especially how that band, which was, they were also known in the early days as Lawbreakers, one of the more combative, rough bands of East Port-of-Spain, teamed up with a very shy and quiet country boy, Ranjit Samaru, who was, from a small band called the Samaru Kids. And, this unlikely combination gelled so that they stuck with them through the years when they didn't win anything until they began to win. And the relationship between the band, the sponsor, which was Amoco, and the arranger was the longest standing relationship between those three figures in the steel band movement.
But I want to ask, we always hear about the Bajans. You would have had access to stories from the people who, some of them would have been involved in the wars, so to speak. But what exactly was the root cause of all of that violence?
Well, it's interesting, because even the people who were involved, when they look back at it, they say, "Boy, we don't know what was happening," right? So there's that. I have my ideas, and how could I explain? First of all, there's the tradition of competition. We have it, there's always Sparrow versus Kitchener, this one versus that one. Mm-hmm. So that was the bedrock. And it is not just Trinidadian, it is part of the African culture. Jazz bands, jazz funerals in New Orleans would get into fights, and they would have, they would have guys with baseball bats. If they meet another band belonging who at a funeral, who's the person being buried was a member of different organization. You had it in the samba schools in Rio. So it's not. You even had it between sound systems in Kingston. So there was that. There was that competition. In some ways, it was analogous to Manchester versus Liverpool. With the supporters. And on top of that bedrock of, competitiveness between organizations and between communities. You got something that was uniquely Trinidadian. And I suppose this is why people say they don't understand what it... Even the people involved didn't know what was happening.
Wow.
And ironically, I would say it was love. If you realize that a steel band, the members of a band, and they were small, were very, very closely knit, very tight, close friendships, to the point where, if somebody touch a member of my band, I'm really angry. It's as if all of the emotion involved in developing your band and developing the instrument and making your own instrument and developing the music created, it's like it tightened springs that they were so tightly coiled that the slightest thing could unleash it. And it's like, and I say it's love because they really did love their bands, in some ways more than their families. Some of those guys, they would tattoo their bands on their arms. I mean, this is what you belong to.
Right.
These were your closest friends. So when you got this competitiveness, the instrument is now being invented, the music now being invented, and each trying to outdo the other. And you have this deep emotion, this deep committal. It spilled into violence very, very easily. And it's only when they learn to control it and to channel it into other avenues that it began to make sense. But I've spoken to a lot of those guys. I mean, guys who literally on occasions try to kill one another. And they look back and they say, what was that about? What was that?
Wow.
So that's what it was. I think it was, you might say, the creation of the steel band movement and the creation of all of these bands. It built up a deep emotion in the bands that, there's a song by Ella Fitzgerald when it's about love, and she says, what's this emotion I'm feeling? I feel like, I'm going crazy. I don't know what's happening to me. Very powerful emotions, and they didn't have outlet for it.
Yeah.
So
but you spoke about this family and this love in your TEDx talk. And I just want to urge you guys who are listening to go onto YouTube and look for that. It's Dr. Kim Johnson. It's a TEDx talk, TEDx Port of Spain. And I think the title was...
The Beating Heart of Music.
Of Music, right. Excellent. Just short and sweet. Just go on and take a listen to it. But I want to ask you, before we have to go to a spot break, how did that closeness between the guys in the band, how did that affect the communities that these bands were? When I say how did it have a positive, besides all the fights and all that, because they were protecting their own kind of thing? How did that spill over into the communities? And because Pan came out of the communities, so I guess besides the bands, there was the love of
Pan.
Right.
Well, the thing is, you have to cast your imagination back to a time which was very different from today. I mean, today, Pan has become very much a kind of niche affair. Yeah. But when you talk about the 40s, 50s, 60s, Pan in Trinidad was like rock and roll in the US, or before that, jazz or reggae in Jamaica, or before that, ska. Everybody, all young people, you couldn't not love it. It was, I mean, Pan was you. Even if you couldn't play because, your parents wouldn't let you or whatever, it didn't change the fact that it was young people music. It's like hip hop.
Right.
You couldn't be young and not like it. So, I mean, they had this. Many people couldn't play because the licks they would get and so on, and girls were not allowed, and it was the craziness of the prejudice of the society. But there's no doubt that you loved your community band.
Yeah.
The band from your neighborhood was. It was like, I don't know if you remember when Trinidad got to Germany in World Cup.
Yes.
Okay, well, every neighborhood was like that. what the whole nation experienced. Come on, this is us. This is our boys.
But it would have been the societies outside of those directly involved with the pan that would have been given opposition to it. The higher classes and all of those.
It wasn't necessarily the higher classes, actually, because it people in the lower class were also against their daughters being involved, and in cases their sons. One boy, he would have been a young man who was one of the lead players of Casablanca. When his mother heard that he was in Casablanca, I mean, she boiled water. She said, "I'm going to score you into a white man." So it wasn't only the middle class and the upper class. And indeed, you had within those groups, you had some who were very supportive. So, for example, the Chinese and the Portuguese, who formed the first middle class band, like Dixieland, they didn't have that prejudice against pan at all. Interestingly, it was Dixieland, which was largely Chinese and Portuguese, that introduced Dr. Eric Williams to pan. I speculate it's because these were shopkeepers. You know, they were people who had a close relationship to the masses through, you know, the institution of trust and so on.
Credit.
Yeah, through credit.
Yeah.
And the boys, I mean, as I said, every young boy and every young girl loved pan. And if their parents didn't have the prejudice, I think the prejudice among working class black parents came from, perhaps it was protective. There was this deep need for respectability for their children to get up in life, and they saw, you know, being a hooligan as
a dead end.
Yeah. And it's also why, for instance, very quickly we lost patois as a language. It was the same impulse. You need to learn English because you need to go to school and get a good education to get a job in the civil service. So they just never taught patois to their kids. So it was a deep desire for respectability that made them hate what seemed to be, you know, just hooliganism, and not everyone in society felt that way. Perhaps the groups who were more self-confident were possibly felt less so. I remember speaking with Ernest Ferreira, who was the founding person for Dixieland, and he hid his first pan under his house, and he would play it with a turkey feather so his parents wouldn't hear. And one Sunday lunch, his father said, "You're not afraid scorpion bite you under the house? Bring that thing upstairs." And he realized his father knew all along, and he didn't care.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just a class issue. It was, you know, those who felt insecure about their respectability were very much against, you know, being associated with it.
Okay. Well, again, for those of you just joining here, I am here with Dr. Kim Johnson. Kim. And, you know, this is so interesting to me because a lot of the things that are taught in school, in the history books, social studies and all of that, for the most part...
Stupidness.
Right. You could say that, right.
No, but they still tell people about, you know, Caribs eating arrowhacks, and that's foolishness.
I know, right?
It's completely untrue.
So we're in a sense rewriting... They are rewriting history, and we're, in a sense, trying to correct it in a few minutes. But, you know what? I implore you to stay locked on. We are going to talk about a lot of things in this short space of time. Hopefully, when we come back, we can get into Pan Music Odyssey. I'll have to take a short spot break. And at some point, I'll open the phone lines because I know the questions are pouring in. I can see in the shout box. So keep it locked. We'll be back shortly.
Steelpan City.
we're back. It's 3:30 inside Steelpan City. I'm here with Dr. Kim Johnson, the foremost pan historian in the world. And we're having a good chat here. I'm learning a lot. I'm sure you are as well. He has had the privilege of, really talking with the people who were directly involved in the building of the Steelpan movement. And I think at this point we want to get into the docudrama, the movie, Pan, the Music Odyssey. In the background here, we have one of the pieces from the song track.
Yeah, that piece actually was composed by Ray Hallman. It was the piece they played when they went on stage, and I asked Ray to compose a piece almost in the style of Kitchener. I wanted a charming melodic pan composition, and Ray did wonders. I mean, I could almost hear Kitchener singing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really, wow.
Yeah, I mean, to do that, we had to have antique instruments built and then music composed that could play on those instruments. And then the players taught how to play that music on those instruments.
So who built the instruments? Who had the...
Clifford Alfred.
Okay.
One of the tuners who actually is in the film. You see him talking. Yes. One of the top tuners in Trinidad. Yep. He built the instruments, the small pans, the old biscuit drums. We had to source metal containers. Penta Paints gave us some the right sizes for us to cut down to make like small pans and all sorts of things like that. A lot of it I had to do, go and get metal containers, one 18 inches, one 12 inches, and then Cliff had to tune them, and then Ray had to compose music that could play on those.
Yeah. All right, and what about the players?
Well, it was a combination of real panists and the actors who had to kind of shadow as if they were playing and perhaps learn some of the simpler pieces. Like before Pan was playing this, which was proper melodies and harmonies and so on, we had them playing just rhythm, just a simple rhythm, and to emphasize the move from the small pans to the big pans kind of thing. And they had to practice, they had to learn all of that.
These were people that would have never played before, you're talking about, right?
The average young person.
Yeah, well, tell me, right? Yeah. Okay, so, I mean, I'm jumping ahead here to go back. But the average young person who would have been an actor or actress in the movie, how did being a part of this affect their appreciation for the instrument?
Well, I think people who saw the film, Trinidadians who saw the film, several people came to me and said, well, look, I'm going to a panyard now. This year I'm going to a panyard. Or some people came and said, for the first time, I feel proud of what we did. So I got a lot of comments like that. And those were also the comments of the actors. But I don't know if it was because they acted in it. You see, you have to understand that when you make a film, the actors don't act their parts in the sequence of the story.
Like the average person would think that's what happened.
No, and then they are just there for their little bit.
Right.
So they don't know what the story is. They don't have a clue until they see it on the screen. So they are like John Public in a sense.
Yeah.
So when they came, I mean, as a matter of fact, sometimes actors are sometimes very disappointed because a whole scene with some actors isn't used.
Yeah.
So you act your heart out, and when you go and watch it, where am I?
Wow. So okay. Well, all right. Let's start from the beginning of this production. What was the goal, the author's intent? What was the goal of Pan or Music Odyssey? The goals, because they are.
We get to know.
Yes. Sorry.
Well, it started off with a discussion between myself and Jean-Michel Gibert, because I'm also a co-producer.
Right.
And Jean-Michel and I I had done a short documentary on Pan, about 10 or 12 minutes, and Jean-Michel saw it and he came and said, he wants to make a feature-length documentary on Pan.
That short, documentary was part of the exhibition.
Yes. The audacity of the cruel imagination.
Yeah.
And several people had been telling me, why don't you make a proper full-length documentary? So he had the idea and I had the idea. So he approached me and said, let's make a feature-length documentary. And I said, well, I'm not really interested in doing that unless we could make it good enough to be international quality, and maybe we will launch it at Cannes. And he said, well, he has a friend who is actually a very big film producer in France, one of the biggest in France. Mm-hmm. Let's call him and ask his opinion how to do that. And we called Bartholomew Fouget, he's known as Bartu the Frenchman. And when we called Bartu said, well, actually, he has loved Pan for a very long time, and he set up Calypso Association, which is like the French Pan Trinbago.
Yes.
And one of his first movies was actually a short documentary on Donnell Thomas, who was a child Pan star in potential in Panas. Mm-hmm. And he wanted to be part of the team. So that's how the three of us got together and decided we were going to make this thing. And the first thing Bartu said was that the idea we had, which was a standard documentary, a sort of History Channel,
kind of informative,
boring.
Right.
Bartu said, we're not doing that. It'll be difficult to sell that.
Yes.
So he said, we'll have reenactments. That's the first thing. And the second thing he said is, we're going to look at characters, individuals, and we'll choose, 3 or 4 bands and follow individuals in the bands. So that's how it started. I mean, it grew into something that was quite different, but that's what started me down the road. Mm-hmm. So we filmed several characters in different bands. Donald didn't want to be part of it. He was the musical director of Superstars. I always loved Phase 2. We moved from Silver Stars to All Stars. And then Bartu said that Andy Narrell was bringing down 60 or 50 players to Birdsong. It was about 30 Americans and about 20 French people. And we should look at him, because if we had some foreign players, it would be easier to sell the film to abroad.
Right.
So we did Birdsong, and we ended up following about 10 characters, not all of whom made it into the film. Now, the idea of reenactments was just reenactments of events along the history of Pan. No dialogue, just when metal was first introduced, when this happened, when that happened. Like in several documentaries, they would reenact scenes.
Yeah.
But after we had followed the characters in the bands, Bartu thought their stories were not strong enough to carry the film. You need a strong story that people would emotionally follow.
Connect, right.
So he said, well, Kim, I'm afraid you're going to have to redo those reenactments as a story. So that's how I ended up writing what became the fictional element, drawing on actual events and actual people and sort of joining them together.
So fact fiction.
Yes.
Mix.
Yes. Yeah. Let me give you an example. Important part of the story is when a guy from a band gets stabbed, and the little boy gets thrown in jail. That was a fictionalizing of when someone who's not a boy, he was a teenager, Ellie Manette from Invaders, stabbed Ozzy Campbell from Casablanca. And Ozzy Campbell was in hospital and perhaps dying. Ellie was thrown in jail. And immediately, all of the middle-class supporters of Invaders, because Invaders was the Woodbrook band.
Yes.
The doctors and lawyers and all the Little Carib and the John Buddy Williams and all of them, Errol Hill, said, we have to do something about this violence. All of a sudden they were concerned because Ellie was the darling of the middle class. And Otley, who was a probation officer, actually went and spoke to the some of the magistrates and said, all the pan men who are on charges, if we get them to sign a truce, would you, drop charges and so on? And then they went and got the bands. There was actually a peace meeting in a rum shop between invaders, Casablanca, and I think Tokyo. So it was loosely based on real events like that.
Yeah.
When he went to Tacarigua, that actually happened. The person who introduced pan to Tacarigua was Andrew Bedo, who at the time used to play in Tokyo, and he was also an Orisha drummer. So he went to a band in Tacarigua that's still playing bamboo and introduced pan to them. So all of those events actually happened.
Right.
It's just sometimes a change in name of the band. But in a strange way, the history came back to us. I mean, the Orisha scene in the film, which actually was an Orisha film scene. I mean, Ogun, the deity of iron and war, actually did manifest. And it was real drummers, and it was a real Orisha scene going on in the film. And it turns out that the lead person, the person who has the black rooster in the film, he knew, and I think was related to Mother Gerard, who was the Orisha priestess. Yes, in Tacarigua at the time. Penny played her in the film.
Mm-hmm.
So, the truth and the fiction interacted in many ways, including ways that I didn't plan or expect. When we were filming the fight scene in the Lucky Jordan nightclub, we blocked off Prince Street and George Street from about 2 p.m. in the afternoon until 7 a.m. next morning. And, we caused a nightmare traffic jam in Port of Spain. And everyone from the plannings came out to watch. So everyone is there on the other side of the road watching. And, we film in the daylight scenes and old cars driving and actors walking up and down and so on. And then we film the scene where they're running up the staircase to go and fight. And the little boy gets left behind. And a lady who's standing next to me, an elderly lady, she said, "Oh God, again, goosebumps. He go stab the fella."
Wow.
And we hadn't filmed that yet. So I said, "Madam, how do you know that?" And she said, "I was there when it happened." So the same thing that I had actually conjured up in my imagination
Wow.
had really happened. That staircase leading up to the Lucky Jordan, it was such a creepy place. When you walk up there, I thought, well, we were going to do a fight scene. I thought, it has to happen on this staircase.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so at that point, I mean, even if, which I guess by now you would have been sure that this was something that, I mean, you were fully involved.
Yeah.
But at that point, when that lady said that, I mean, that was just validation for you, I guess, extra.
Not really. I mean, up until it showed in Trinidad, and if you realize we premiered it in France, up until it showed at Globe, and the overwhelming response was positive. People laughed, people cried, they laughed at the jokes. When the band won on stage, the Globe Cinema applauded. Only then did I feel, safe.
Right.
Because you have to realize that, think of all the films you've seen. Have you ever seen a combination where it moves between fiction and non-fiction, between 1947 and 2013, and you're following 4 non-fictional characters and 2 fictional characters? Jumping between genres, jumping between dates, a 6-day leap. And I didn't know if I'd never seen a film like that before.
Right.
So we were doing something that was really out of the box, and I was very nervous about it. And then plus the fact that, Trinidadians are very touchy. I mean, I have had people comment and say, "So why you have this film? Where Jit Samaru? Why didn't have Jit Samaru? Of course, and what about this? What about that?"
And why are there so many foreigners in the film?
Okay, well, that was originally the title was Pan We Are the World. Part of the idea behind the film is to show that this thing came from Trinidad, it was invented in Trinidad, but people all over the world come here. It's now a global thing. So that was part of the idea. Another part of the idea is just dollars and cents.
Yeah.
You have it's very, very difficult to break into the foreign film television market. Very, very difficult. And we thought part of the way we could do it is by having people from those countries so we could market it there. So it was, partly our vision of Pan as a global instrument.
And partly strategic.
Partly strategic.
Yeah. Okay. We have to take another break.
Yeah.
Well, when we come back, we're going to segue into...
questions.
Yeah, some questions.
Hot seat.
So the phone lines will be open when we get back after this break. And we still have a lot to talk about. Dr. Kim Johnson, he's going to be here till the end of the show. So come with your questions. I know you have them waiting, whether it's in the shout box or you're calling in. You know the number to call, 652-4901. We'll be right back after this.
Steelpan City.
Who do this? Who do this?
I saw father down me, man. And I told them no matter how much pan they teeth, you can have a son as good as me. And then they chased me down. One name Ozzy said he beat me so I can't play pan no more. Then he lashed me with a stick.
Fed up with them fellas, But we end this now.
And we're back and we're ready for your phone calls. Feel free to call in and ask Dr. Kim Johnson anything. He is well prepared to take your questions.
Look on the sun now raising up, and the crowd now waking up.
And we have our first call.
And nothing can break it up. The girl them a wine non-stop.
Hi, calling on the air.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Mr. Johnson.
Good afternoon.
I am one of those students who have been in the courses over the years. From Clinton to South Capal times. And this is the question I want to ask. What type of knowledge you gained from your research with Mr. Oscar Pyle? Because, he was one of the, even though he's deceased, he was one of the researchers and the main historians. And the next person is Mr. Darwin. What type of knowledge you got from these two men?
Well, I got a tremendous amount.
I would listen.
Okay. Thanks, caller. Okay.
Yeah, man.
Should I respond to that now?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, Oscar Pyle was the captain of Casablanca. And what a lot of people don't know is that Casablanca there were two great bands in the 40s that pushed Pan ahead. And one was Casablanca, and the other was Invaders. And interestingly, Oscar Pyle originally was from Newtown. And Casablanca was the first band that played classical music. In 1950, they played a recital with Walter Katz, who was a pianist, a Jewish pianist, and Leslie, I think his name is Leslie Soverall, who was a singer, a tenor singer, and they performed there. And when the band and the pianist played Chopin Nocturne in E flat, I mean, it blew people's mind. All of a sudden, people who were critical of Pan realized that, hey, this thing could do anything.
Anything, yeah.
And everything changed after that. I mean, the whole society swung behind the steel band movement. And I mean, some of those things I learned from Oscar. Darwin, on the other hand, Darwin was a West. I mean, he was a champion of the West. Darwin saw everything coming from the West, which was, I suppose, it was an aspect of, the partisanship of the Pan Man. But I'd learned quite a bit from Darwin about Crossfire, which was his band, which was actually the first band to Tripoli, the first band to amplify pans. They had a kind of speaker system, and he actually showed me the photograph of it.
Because, people say that it was Highlanders.
Yeah, but that's not true. I mean, the photograph,
Proves,
the documents don't
that's
lie.
hard proof, right?
Yes. I mean, that's not to say that Bertie Marshall did not do marvelous things, and Bertie Marshall is the person responsible for the modern ringing sound of Pan.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to give Jack his jacket. And the West is the land of Invaders, Tripoli, and North Stars, who were three of the great bands in the early days, coming right up to the 70s. And Invaders is still there, one of the great steel bands.
We're taking your calls, 6524901. At the top of the hour, we'll have to break for pan news, but, the lines are open and you are free and welcome to call and put Dr. Johnston in the hot seats. I call you on the air.
Hi, Vanessa. How are you? Mike CV here.
Yes, Mike. I know you're in your glee.
Oh, yes, I am. Yes, I am.
All right. I know you have questions for Kim.
Yes, Dr. Kim, thank you so much for the great work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Documenting the culture of our steel pan. I am currently reading your book, The Illustrated Story of Pan. Fantastic images. Love the stories.
Thank you.
However, for the movie, I've looked at that thing about 3 or 4 times already.
Wow.
As soon as it came available, I recall making a donation to get that free download. And something sort of happened that I didn't get it. But eventually, you guys did. That's okay. You did mail me the movie, and I'm still trying to get you to do a release in Boston, here where I'm located. The movie, you have a running story there of the gentleman trying to get somebody to use the oil drum, to tune the oil drum, as opposed to using the ping pong that we were using.
Yeah.
1, is it a true story? 2, who is the individual that you would credit to going from the ping pong to the oil drum, and the way it's used in the movie? Is that the true story?
Okay.
CV, sorry.
Yeah.
We will Dr. Kim will answer off air, right? Is that okay with you?
That's fantastic.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Several people, as general throughout the history of Pan, several people arrived at the same solution in different bands at different times. So, for example, Anthony Williams, very early on, he tried to move to the big oil drum, because this is immediately after the war. He was in Sun Valley, and the captain, Sonny Roach, rejected the idea. The story I got from the boys in Tacarigua was supported by Neville Jules, who described to me that event in Palladium Cinema. So I got that story from 3 different people in 3 different bands. So I take that as the one that I actually go with. Elie Manette has also claimed to be the one to introduce the large pan, but I don't think that's at all true, because I've seen an interview with Elie done about late 1946, early 1947, where he was still using the old paint and olive oil tin. So that, I think, is the true story of the people who made the move to the oil drum and started other people doing it. You see, in the history, someone might do it, but other people don't follow them.
Yeah.
The guys, Boomtown in Tacarigua, they attended a competition in Palladium, and I remember Neville Jules said people laugh at them, boo them. They were just a bunch of country boys. And when they began to play, all of a sudden people got silent, and people realized, look, this is the way forward. So Boomtown, which was housed right next to Mother Jera's Orisha Palais, that story is roughly true. And those were the ones who, made the move in a big way. Other people, someone told me, even in Shagona, they had tried moving to the oil drum, but the ones who did it publicly was a small, fairly unknown band from Tacarigua.
Okay. So it's just 2 minutes before 4. I will take one more call before we have to break for Pan News. Let's see.
Eeny, meeny.
Hi, caller, on the air.
Yes, it's me again. Mr. Johnson, thanks for clearing up that one, because one of my past historians, which was the PRO All-Stars, which is Mr. Jerry Sorant, have always been saying this and having arguments. You know? The next thing is that I wanted to extend a little more on Oscar Pearl, because at my time of doing classes on the Oscar Pearl, he will say that from the Tambu Bamboo, certain people will come around, and then a man will come around with a 4-note pan and play. They didn't know his name, you know, and then he spoke about Toti Wilson in that era there with the Queen's Royal Club. So I thought he would have expanded on some of the things that you heard from Oscar now.
Okay, caller, thank you.
Yeah.
Should I reply now? Or,
sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Toti Wilson was important. You see, at that time, you're talking about 1938, 1939. Several people were doing, you know, introducing metal. The two main groups, one was the group in Newtown, that's Alexander's Ragtime Band, and one was the group in Gonzales. They used to call them the First 11, I think. And Oscar Pyle, even though he was born and grew up in Newtown, he had moved to Gonzales. And now, in the Tambu Bamboo, they had begun to use the boom, the biscuit drum, to replace the bass bamboo, because pounding on the bottom of the road used to break it up. But that wasn't a sort of gradual shift over from Tambu Bamboo to metal. It was like one day you have Tambu Bamboo, and then the next day you have pan. And you know, a lot of people, in a sense, think that the Tambu Bamboo people gave up bamboo and moved to pan. But it didn't really happen like that. What happened is that pan was a young people thing. It was young teenagers. Tambu Bamboo tended to be older people. And in those days, young people didn't mix with old people. You know, they had rigid separation between different age groups. You know, when old men, when I say old, I'm talking about even 20s, 30s, gambling or doing whatever. They wouldn't let any teenager come hanging around. They would chase them off. So it was like a very rigid generation gap. And when the young people decide they're going to beat iron, a lot of them didn't know how to beat Tambu Bamboo and had never done that. It was completely new. It was like when rock and roll first came on the scene in the US. The older people, they hated it. You know, they didn't want to have anything to do with it. And it was a completely young people thing. And that's what pan was. Pan was young people. It's like when hip-hop first come out. No old person want to hear hip-hop. That's young people thing. So it was something like that.
It's really interesting that now the tables have turned.
The tables have turned. Not only in terms of the age, who are the lovers of pan, everybody over 55, but also the gender.
Yes.
Because most of the players are female.
Yes.
Like yourself, Vanessa.
We'll save that for after pan news. But again, thank you, Kim. Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for being here. Dr. Johnson is a senior research fellow at the Academy for Arts.
Well, I was. Now I work at the Carnival Institute.
Yes. Right.
Yes.
And also the 2011 Anthony Sabga Laureate for Excellence in Arts and Letters. All right, so we have to take a break. Here's your pan news to let you know what's trending in the pan world. We'll be back. Keep it locked and come ready with your questions. All right? Okay, so we're back inside. It's 4:09. I'm here with Dr. Kim Johnson, the foremost pan historian in the world. That's how I'm going to refer to you.
Stop it.
I'm the one. Oh, gosh. Okay, he's begging me to stop. Kim, I'm here with Kim. But so that people know who I'm talking to. All right, so we're jumping right back into the phone lines because I have a call here. Hi, caller, you on the air?
Well, hello, Vanessa. This is FB in Florida.
Hi, FB.
I want to say hi to your esteemed guest, Dr. Kim Johnson. I have a question for him.
Yeah, shoot.
Sure, go ahead.
Dr. Johnson, what do you attribute this to? The fact that there is no real formal/official documentation of the history of Steelpan by organizations such as the Ministry of Culture and Pan Trinbago. Right now out there are so many different variations of the same story. And we depend on word of mouth for the most part to get, information today. And some information may be on the internet and books like yours.
Well, I have 2 books on this subject. Unfortunately, the more accessible one, which is the illustrated story of Pan, is out of print. That looks at the whole of Pan history coming pretty much up to the present. And there are lots of photographs and quotes from the pioneers. But unfortunately, it was published by the UTT Press, and it's out of print, even though the demand for it is really still quite large. And I also wrote another book called Steelpan to Taspo, which is much more detailed, and it looks at the steel band movement from 1939 to 1951. Those dates, 1939 was what you might say is the first iron band, which came out of Newtown, Alexander's ragtime band. And 1951 was the first modern steel band, which was Taspo, the Trinidad All-Steel Percussion Orchestra, which went to England. So that book looks at the history. That was published by UE Press. So if you Google Steelpan to Taspo, you'll get, now that one is a more sort of scholarly, detailed study of, what happened in that formative period. So that is, those books do exist. What I would suggest, though, what we should have, and what I certainly would love to see us having, is not so much an authoritative history of Pan, because every historian will have their own take on it. But what would be nice is if we could have the encyclopedia of Pan. You see, if you have a history, you leave out the small bands and you leave out the unimportant ones and you leave out the ones who would make the story too long and boring. But if you have an encyclopedia, you might have been in a band that only lasted 1 year. You will get your you'll get your paragraph, and you could update it every year these days with, online things. So I think the encyclopedia, look at bands, individuals, competitions, events, instruments. It could look at all sorts of things, and it could grow like Wikipedia. So I think that is what should be supported. And in that way, every band should be encouraged to write its own history, gather its own interviews with its own pioneers. Some bands do that, I know, for instance, down here in South, Wire Austin has tremendous archive of Fun Clear. So different people, several bands have had their unofficial historians. And what we need is the encyclopedia that would have all the bands, not just the big ones, Despas and Invaders and so on, but also the small, obscure ones, Nocturne Fascinators and Black Swan and Barataria, and all of the small bands and the events and the shows and the people, Artie Shaw, who used to conduct Desperados, and, lesser known people who nevertheless did tremendous and big and important things, and because their name wasn't in the newspapers, there's a guy whose name I've forgotten now from Chaguanas. He was a great arranger, really great arranger, Bendix Cumberbatch. Actually East Indian despite the name. Great arranger, and people, we forget these people, and the encyclopedia would bring them all in. So that's what I would recommend, actually.
Yeah, that was actually going to be the second part of my question, because I know a couple of months ago we had a discussion on Pan Trivia and with St. Francois girls, and when they actually started, the Steelpan actually started up there. And you had mentioned that on Pan Trivia about having something similar to Wikipedia. So that was going to be the second part of my question. I wanted to find out and ask you, though, what type of progress are you having with that? Did you approach the ministry or, Pan Trinbago? Because that's something that we need. We get all the history, of big bands like Desperados, on Pan Trivia especially. We try to keep up to date on what's going on. We have older members of Despas who contribute. again. But like as you're saying, those smaller bands and arrangers that arrange tunes that, you know, not big name arrangers, but they impacted the culture in some way, form, or fashion.
Yeah.
And some people like myself, we want to know, and we can't find anything anywhere.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I'm not embarking on that particular project. My plate is kind of overfull with many different projects I'm working on right now. So I'm afraid I'll have to pass that on.
Well, there's some of us, you know, that are interested, and you know, we're being mentored right now. Ian Franklin is the name that comes to mind. But, you know, we want to find out more, not just about the big bands and the big winners.
Let me recommend something, because you see, between 2001 and 2010, Wikipedia was started in 2001, and by 2010, it was the largest collection of human knowledge ever, and it was all voluntary. If you start something, you know, Wikipan online, and encourage the same pan trivia and all people who know to add something, and you have, you know, someone who edit and so on, I think that's how it has to go, because no one person writes an encyclopedia. You know, you have enormous teams, and maybe we could use the internet to do it as a collective thing, because, I mean, I have been, like, you know, sometimes emails would circulate on Facebook, and somebody would say something about Belmont, and next thing you know, people from all over the world are putting in their 2 cents worth, and I remember this and I remember that. So if you could get someone to just launch, you know, Wikipan online.
I am writing that down.
I think that's how it has to be done, because no encyclopedia is written by an individual. You need, you let it be, you know, encourage the steel bands themselves to make their contribution, rather than you write about Desperados. Let Desperados
speak about
themselves.
Right.
And that way, you could encourage the bands to appoint posts within the band. You know, steel bands these days have fairly complex, you know, organizational structure. Well, everyone should have an archivist who will, you know, clip out the newspaper, keep the little ticket stubs, the little advertisements or the flyers or whatever, and you know, build the albums and take out the photographs when they travel and so on, and pass that down.
Yeah.
So, you know, the Wikipan will not just create the online encyclopedia, which could be updated every year and updated all the time as people add information, but it could also encourage the bands to start to document their own histories.
Yes,
exactly.
Excellent.
All right. Okay, thank you so much, sir. Good job,
welcome.
Vanessa.
Thanks, FB. Okay.
Okay, bye.
All right. So, quickly, because I have a question coming in here to Facebook. You had mentioned, while speaking with FB, I call her FB, you mentioned people like Y and they who, you know, have archives mentally, right? Somebody wants to know what is the most significant input of the South in the pan world?
Well, one of the first bands to play proper music on pan, and you have to realize that was a major breakthrough, because the young panists, pan beaters, didn't know music, so they didn't harmonize their instruments properly. They didn't have real proper musical arrangements, and the first band to do that was actually Southern Symphony with the Bonaparte brothers. So that was, I mean, and I'm talking in the 40s, 47, 48, 49. That was showed that from the beginning, the South was making huge contributions to the music, and then you had the great tuners to come from South. I mean, everyone would have known of someone like, well, they should know of someone like, say, Alan Jervis. Alan was one of the greatest tuners ever, who unfortunately died young.
And another one of those names that you don't hear as regularly or as much as you should, in comparison to others like probably Bertie Marshall
and then of course Lincoln Noel. Lincoln Noel was one of the greatest tuners ever. And then arrangers, I mean, Earl Rodney, Bobby Muhammad. After Bobby Muhammad came up north with Cavaliers, the sound of pan changed. He changed the sound of a steel band. as did Earl Rodney. And it was the combination of them with Alan Jervis, the tuner, who tuned pans that you could hit them hard and loud and make volume, that had Guinness and Harmonites ruling the roost, for a while. And that is what formed what we know today as pan. They created the modern sound of a steel orchestra. So, South was crucially important. And that's why I always say I don't like to get into this individual as opposed to that, because pan was a Trinidadian invention. People of, a lot of people don't know that the double second was invented by Ernest Ferreira, a white Portuguese person from Dixieland. He invented it, and it was tuned by Percy Thomas, who was the tuner for Dixieland, and this was 1951, very early on. Everyone in Trinidad made a contribution to the music or the instrument or the ensemble or something, and that's, you see, the steel band, and this is what I say in my TED talk, is an institution that has embraced everyone. If you go in a big panyard today, one of the big, Despers or Phase 2 All-Stars, you will see people, and they could be young, they could be 10 years old, 9 years old, or they could be 80 years old. They could be white, black, Indian, Chinese. They could be Hindu, Orisha, Catholic, Muslim, male, female, upper class, lower class, uneducated, university, doctorate. In other words, all of the social divisions humans have used to exclude other humans, whether it's race, class, education, nationality, ethnicity, gender, age. The steel band movement has transcended it, and it is unique in the world. In the world, there's no other institution in the world that has transcended all form of human exclusion like pan. You're going to a panyard, and it's not just the players. A steel band is more than the players. You will see the person who, he kind of schizophrenic and he kind of mad, but he waving flag. He has a role. Even mad people have a role, and I think that is one of the great things of pan and of Trinidad and Tobago, and we don't recognize that. But you go there and you'll see somebody from Tokyo, and somebody from London, and somebody from Laventille, and somebody from Goodwood Park, and somebody from Caroni, and they all there as equals. Wow. That's marvelous.
It is such a unique thing. Well, 422. I'm not going to take a spot break now because I want to get into this. At the Laventille, was it in Laventille Nights, Dr. Keith Rowley made a statement that has resonated in the steel pan world. He was talking about, yes, it's time that we use our steel pan art form for economic diversification. And people are like, okay, we're now realizing this. What is your take on that, on the steel pan? And of course, Kaiso and all these things.
Well, of course, culture has to be one of the main areas of economic diversification. And there's people been singing that song for a very long time. The Chamber of Commerce. Some years ago, that guy, Richard Branson, the big English businessman, came down here and he said, well, hey, why aren't you all focusing on culture's greatness? So, that's old news. The question is, like many, many things, it's easy to say, but more difficult to do. Yeah. And when I say difficult to do, I would think, but just let me sort of raise a conundrum. In terms of fame, international fame, there aren't many places that could beat Jamaica. The Jamaican brand is known and admired and loved all over the world. People know the Jamaican flag, in all over the world. Yet Jamaica is still a poor country. So obviously to monetize your cultural achievements, and there's no doubt in the greatness of Jamaica's cultural achievements in reggae and Mali and dancehall. To monetize it, to actually lift a society is more challenging. How do we do that, and how will Trinidad do that? I mean, there are things I think we could and certainly should be doing, and it's madness that we haven't been doing it. Recently, I've pointed out to several people that a form of tourism, we think of tourism as somebody come down on a cruise ship or come down for carnival and spend a week here and go back. But if you realize that one of the most profitable forms of tourism is educational tourism, somebody come down for 6 months or a year, and they spend, 100 times more than the 6-day visitor. We should be the place where people all over the world come to learn pan, learn to tune, learn to play, learn to arrange. And we will lose that soon if we don't, invest the time and the money. I know Dennis Phillips from Birdsong, who's now the CEO of NCC, has been pushing that for some time. Years ago, I went to Morgantown at the University of West Virginia, where Ellie Manette is. And Ellie had a program that had people coming from as far away as Tokyo, learning to tune, learning to play. There were people coming from all over the U.S. and several countries. And just as what Northern Illinois University is doing now, they were operating as hubs to spread pan. Now, my feeling is that should be Trinidad. We should be the hub. You come here, you buy the best instruments, you get the best education, you learn, and you be part of the best ensembles in the world. But we have to, wake up and do it. It isn't going to fall in our lap. If you realize that the piano was invented a combination of Italy and Germany, but everybody knows Steinway pianos, which is an American brand, The original Steinway was German, and like a German Jew, they kicked him out, and he went to the U.S. And bear in mind that Ellie Manette is in the U.S. If we don't look sharp, same thing will happen to us.
It's happening. It's happening.
Except this is still the place where everybody wants to come. If you speak to the panists, and we have to do something. We have to, people made a fuss people complain that why are you making such a fuss about when that Japanese girl was so horribly murdered. You have to make a fuss about that, because that is not just the human tragedy, because people die, sadly people are murdered, but also our international appearance. Trinidad is known. Trinidad is known for that, for the English cricketer who was killed, and for Jack Warner and his antics with FIFA.
Yeah.
That's what we're known for. And Pan can let us be known for something else, for something great and beautiful. And it's not just culture with benefit. Every businessman, if you're doing business with a country, and what you know of that country is that, they're artistic and they do great things and so on, you will quicker do business with them, even if your business has nothing to do with culture. So that's certainly why I think we should be supporting it. In addition to the fact that it's one of the best things we ever did.
Who could argue with that? All right, so it's 4:28. The lines are still open, as I said, right till the end. Of course,
which is soon.
Right? So if you have something to ask, now is the time. But I'll take a spot break, give you a chance to gather your thoughts, and we'll be back.
Steelpan City.
True defenders of our culture. WACK 90.1 FM. True defenders of our culture.
The True Nation Station.
Okay, I'm back with Kim. I'm back with Dr. Kim Johnson, and I'm going straight back to the phone lines, okay? It's 4:33. Let's take you. Hi, caller, you on the air?
Vanessa, it's me again.
Yes, hi.
I have a two-part question for Dr. Johnson.
Okay.
This is a discussion that we have like almost every other week or so in Pan Trivia. Do you think that the Steelpan right now and the culture of the Steelpan is at a crossroads? Because some people think that Steelpan right now and the culture in Trinidad is at a crossroads.
Will you take your answer off air when you give the second part?
Okay, and the second part is, what does Dr. Johnson, where does he see the future of the Steelpan in Trinidad? Where does he see it in, let's say, 5-10 years down the road from now?
Okay, FB, thank you.
Okay, well, it's actually sort of like 1.5 questions there. Each, crossroad, yes, but also worse than crossroad. They're kind of going downhill. If you go to the Panyards, the average age is over 50 of the audience. You know, the average age of the player would perhaps be under 25, maybe even under 20.
Yeah, under 20, yeah.
And the average age of the audience is over 50. And that's a really terrible situation, especially since a lot of the players are there because they were in school bands and they moved there and they're getting paid. And in 3 years or 4 years, they will probably not be in that band. So if you look at all the forms of popular music, when you see you no longer have your young audience, they die. Or they become a small niche. Like if you look at jazz was the popular music that people danced to and so on in the 30s and 40s. Now it's a kind of small niche that very few people really listen to, despite all the talk about jazz festival and so on. And that is the road that unfortunately Pan is heading down. If it's not there yet, so you're right to say it's a crossroad. There's hopefully there's still time, perhaps with some imagination and genuine people, not you know, some of the kind of charlatans who are involved, genuine committed people, perhaps to tap into the tremendous energy that the steel band movement still has. It still has you know, tremendous energy. There's still a lot of love, but there's love, but it's a patient. It's on in the ambulance on the way to the hospital.
You told me it's on life support.
I didn't want to be so extreme on
yeah,
air.
well, we have to be because, you know.
But it's the reality of every form of popular music. If it loses its young audience, that is the swan song. And I mean, the Ministry of Culture did a study where they looked at even at semi-finals, which is the big Pan event, and even though there were people of all ages there, the people who went because they love Pan were again the same over 50.
Yeah.
The younger ones went for the party or the lime or whatever, not for the Pan. And the best way to see that is that even when you have young players in a band, none of their friends come to hear them.
We spoke of this, and you know what? How do we begin to fix it? Well, that's another show. I have to take another call. Hi, caller, you on the air?
Yes, good day. Good day, Dr. Kim.
Hi, good day.
Yeah, as you correctly pointed out before, most inventions you'll find there are 2 or 3 countries are writing at the same point, almost simultaneously. The computer was like that, the motor vehicle was like that, you know, Germany, America, England, things happening almost similarly at the same time. With Pan, is it just a Trinidad story, or were there any significant innovations in other parts of the Caribbean, like Barbados?
No. Trinidad, it's 100% a Trinidad story.
Right.
You know, there's no
Caribbean journey.
No.
There's a significant lag. They were just followers and not,
yeah.
some pioneers.
Yeah, they were just followers. I mean, recently you've begun to have some innovations abroad. The tuners, for instance, who learn under Ellie Manette and them. I mean, they are starting to do things because they have access at universities to, you know, metallurgy and metal scientists. There's that guy in Switzerland who invented the thing, you know, they call it hung drum.
Yeah.
Which is building up, and I mean he was a pan tuner. He started up making pans. He still makes pans and so on. So you see, people are starting to do things, but so far it was mainly definitely the genius of Trinidad. I mean, I always say people don't realize the genius of those inventors. Tony Williams, Bertie Marshall, all of those guys were scientifically an artist. They were genius on a level with any other genius anywhere in the world.
And the other part of what I wanted to say, if you're saying that the youth, as you rightly say, the thing is becoming niche because the youth, they're playing, but they're not attending, etc. And you said the Prime Minister is saying, let's commercialize, let's monetize. What sense is there really? Where's our market going to be? As you already say, most of the market seems to be abroad. The people from Tokyo who are coming, the people from France and so on who are interested. But how do we grow the local? How do we regain and grow the local market? I'll listen off it.
Okay, thanks, Scholar.
I think, well, in a sense, how do you get the young people to claim it as their instrument? And there are several things which I think we should try, yeah? And in a sense, it is to give the instrument to them. Now, when I say give the instrument to them, I don't mean necessarily physically, here, Suzanne, here's your birthday present, a tenor pan or a 6 bass or something. So, but I mean, how we've been going about teaching them pan, I think is the wrongest way. We've been teaching them pan either the old-fashioned way, like the people learned, 40 years ago, which you go and hang out in the panyard and learn a tune by rote. That cannot cut it again. On the other hand, people who see themselves as more sort of in the vanguard and trying to do things more positively, they're teaching pan like how generations of Trinidad females were taught piano, which is, you teach them music theory and you learn your scales and arpeggios and you learn music literacy. And I think the result of that will be equally negative, just as it was negative for all of those women who learned piano.
Yeah, because it became a chore.
It was a total chore, and the last day they touch a piano was the last day of lessons. Yeah. And that is not going to bring in the youth at all. So I think that's a dead end. How you give an instrument to someone is you teach them to teach themselves. In other words, what you teach them to do is first of all learn by ear, which means you like a song. I might not like it and you might not like it, but the youth, they will always have their own music that we don't know and that maybe we don't even like. But you have to give it to them, let them play their own music. So teach them to learn by ear, i.e. to teach themselves, and teach them to improvise, which is essentially to compose. Let them compose their own, arrange their own. I mean, Kola, I don't know what you were like when you were a teenager, but I mean, I have to confess that even though I was from a fairly close-knit family, I wouldn't have wanted to be in an organization when I was 17 years old that my father was in charge of. It's just, it's just, you have to let the youths do their own thing, teach them how to do their own thing, and then let them free. Yeah. That's the only hope I could see.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, we're taking another call. Caller, you're on the air.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson.
Good afternoon.
I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia.
Wow.
What I would like to get clear up is, I hear you mentioned something about lawbreakers, some renegades.
Mm-hmm.
Lawbreakers was a offshoot or just a sideline of renegades.
That's true. That's true. But a lot of people used to refer to renegades as lawbreakers, like they used to refer to Tokyo as marabuntas.
Right.
But yes, you're 100% correct.
Okay, I just wanted to get that clear up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
All right. So I know I'm only reciting the time, but it's 4:43. And we're looking to wrap up, so let's take another call. Hi, caller, you on the air.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, good
Hi,
afternoon.
good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you all.
Good afternoon.
I was listening to what you were saying.
Caller, please turn down your radio. We can hardly hear you.
I was listening to what you were saying concerning any youth involved in it. But I want to believe that these people have to bring the youth to the bar by trying to get them the pan in the pub, the popular line and so on. You understand? If you DJs, the bar owner is to introduce a fan player in the pub, together with a singer, a popular singer, doing the backup and all of that, it will encourage them to come and listen, to come and you've got to be livening in the pubs. The livening in clubs and the pubs, and I just have no pan music in the pubs and the clubs.
That's your question, caller?
That's my suggestion.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Look, the truth is a complex thing, yeah. And to change the to swim against that current, you have to tackle it from several angles. Yeah, of course, and people have to encourage pan, on advertisements, in music, live performances. All of that has to be done. How it is taught, where people get gigs. It's a multifaceted response that has to be coordinated.
Yeah, I have to agree with you because I don't think that what the caller just suggested is necessarily going to have the response that he's looking for, because what will happen, let's say a popular nightclub in Trinidad that is not accustomed to playing local music at all, and you decide, okay, we're gonna throw in a
fan side.
Come on,
and people will
they're gonna strips at you, they're gonna walk out,
and people will lose business.
I think that's like a culture shock kind of scenario. You have to be a little more we have to target,
but we also have to target the bands, the music, because a lot of pan music, I mean, at its best, I love the better panorama arrangements. I mean, I really, really love it. But an awful lot of pan music is kind of like elevator music, I mean, when they play pop tunes and it's just an instrumental version of the pop tune, there's nothing exciting, there's nothing new, nothing fresh about it. If you have a pan side playing, an Adele song, and you have to choose between the two, the only advantage the pan side have is that it's live. Whereas Adele is a CD, is a recording and playing, but otherwise the music is not musically better at all. So we need people who could arrange, be more exciting in their arrangements, maybe let people learn to improvise so you could have a ramage in the tune. The steel band movement in some ways, other than, as I said, in panorama, but in many ways I'd say has tended to be musically very conservative. It has not explored all of the possibilities, the musical possibilities. Right now, what is very, growing worldwide is African music. Music from places like Mali and Senegal, some great music. How come we never explore our African roots of music? In recent decades, you've had the rise of rhythm sections, which is such a beautiful percussive sound, those rhythm sections. Yet, even though steel bands have great engine rooms, when you hear stage side playing some pop tune, they leave out the iron. But the iron is the heart of a band.
Yes.
That is the rhythm, that's the what makes a steel band music so sexy and put so much soul into it, and you drop it out because you're playing your Adele. And that kind of conservatism, all of those things, as I said, that's the kiss of death.
And you have recently released Repercussions.
But that's a change of topic.
No, well, as you were talking about, why haven't we explored our African roots? I thought, why not before we have to go?
Well, I mean, it was a thing. I visited Nigeria in 2014, and made a documentary about some of the steel bands there and a person trying to introduce pan there and so on. And it won the 2015 Best Documentary in the Film Festival last year. So, yeah, I mean, there's pan all over the world, and other people are being much more sort of adventurous and daring with pan. And we have to start, we have to break out of the conservatism. As I say, that's not to knock the best of pan. I still think, a great Smooth Edwards arrangement, a great Boogsy arrangement. I mean, that's music on par with any music anywhere in the world. But by and large, a lot of pan is very conservative and, not very exciting.
Yeah, and we have to do so, but still hold on to the truth of our
soul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Caller, you're lucky. Hi, caller, you're on the air.
Hi, good day, Vanessa.
Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
This is Aquil,
you got through.
Yeah, I got through.
So this is
good day.
Aquil.
Hi, Aquil.
He is the education officer at Trinbago.
Yeah, well, I called off just to say that I'm listening and taking notes. Very interesting topic, caught in between doing some time work for my mom, and I just had to stop and sit down in front of the radio and take notes. So,
no, you don't have to think. You could just give me a call. I at the Carnival Institute in Junior have you. Come up there and let me sit down and talk, because I have plenty ideas, plenty things. Let me just give you something if you need the note-taking mode, right?
Right.
Online, on YouTube, you could learn anything. I think you could even learn to make an atom bomb if you want.
Yes,
or perform heart surgery. And in music, you want to play guitar, you want to play flamenco, you want to play hard rock, soft rock, medium rock, middle of the road rock, you want to play reggae, dancehall, hip hop, beatbox, everything except pan. Right? Now, not everybody could go in a pan yard every night, but there are plenty people who love to learn pan. So you know what? Teach them and put it up free on YouTube. There are things that can be done. That's one thing I'm hoping to do at the Carnival Institute, if I could just get the funding for it. And on and on. We in 2016. Young people, they aren't reading no book, but they're online. They have their apps. Deal with them that way. That's why I made a movie, because that's how you communicate with them. They aren't reading no newspaper. So you have to talk to them through their media, in their language. Yeah. Talk to them in Twitter, in YouTube,
Instagram, you name
Instagram. That's how you go out to them. You want to bring in the young people, you have to talk to them because they're coming to you. So, I have all sorts of ideas and plans. Come up by us and Jonaham Avenue and let me sit down and see what you could do.
Yeah. I would do that for sure. I ain't saying much because I learned that if you want to learn, you have to hush and listen. So,
but all of us, we all learn from one another.
Right. I know some of the things that you touch on. I have little ideas on how to get it happening and so on. Because even Carly, who were responsible for Upper Hillside at one point in time, made a suggestion and I put it towards 2016 budget to see if it would be approved. To have a history competition where you give the bands some sort of incentive to write their own history and make it a competition. So, and they would be putting it up online, whether via Trinbago website or even the Wikipedia thing that it wasn't, as you mentioned it, the two kind of link together. So,
we could bring in the schools. You could bring in the schools. Yeah, if you have a class and you tell them, choose a steel band and go and talk to the elders and see what you could put together and save the recordings so that you could archive them. So even if they're not good writers and they don't write a great history, the raw recordings are there. Collect the old photographs. For my book, The Illustrated Story of Pan, when I started off doing that book, I thought, I would get maybe 100 pictures or, 150 pictures if I'm lucky. I went and asked the people at Trinbago, I said, you ain't helping me at all. You ain't giving me a single picture. So I said, okay, brother, cool. Well, I could tell you in about 3 years, just going on foot with a little portable scanner, writing people and getting them to write people, I accumulated about between 4,000 and 5,000 You hear that number? Archival. People they have under in the album, they have on the wall. I write the American Army. They send me down, I think it was 5 carousels, of slides of Trinidad. Not all of it, not many was Pan, but Trinidad Carnival, all kind of thing, because they was down on the base up until the 60s. I donated all that to UE library, but go out there, because when those old guys pass away, all of them things just get dumped.
Yes.
Right.
So, I mean, these things, we could do it. Not me or you, but we, all of us, Trinidad and Tobago. We could bring in maybe the media, get help from support from the radio, from the press. We could make this place paradise, We could make this country paradise. Pan already has an international network of people all over the world, willing to help, willing to support. When I say 50 or 60 people come down to play in bird song, they pay their money, fly down here, pay their hotel, and contribute to the band because of love of Pan. I remember seeing recently a picture of the Royal Guard of Oman. Some, which is a Middle East country, and you see them fellas in their turban and all that, and this is the Royal Guard, and they playing a steel band, they playing Rudder's Hammer. That is people who all over the world love Trinidad. And so we have an international network ready-made for us. We could do marvelous things, but we have to do it with imagination. We can't do the same old. You get some pop tune, some Britney Spears or something, and you're playing plink, plink, plonk, plonk. Boring arrangement.
Yeah, I agree with you. We need some innovation in the system. We need some thinkers and some doers as well. So we'll try to see if probably by this week here, I'll just leave the number with Vanessa, and we'll hook up and we'll have a discussion.
Great. All right.
Thank you.
But I can give you my number now, I mean, 737-1878. That's my cell, and my email address is ESHU 737-1878. And my email address is ESHU 55 at gmail.com. So, I mean, I am an open book. I have no secrets, and I am a public person. Anybody have ideas? Hey, we could do this. We could do this together, but singly we can't do a damn thing.
Well said. All right, I'll give you a call right as you come off here, so you'll store my number one day.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Aquil. Okay.
No problem.
All right. So, you know what? We're wrapping up. It's just 4 minutes before Brother Wendell Paris comes in. I want to say thank you very much, Kim.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Yes, I hope that I can have you back sometime in the future.
Of course.
And, well, you know what? I don't have a long time to say goodbyes to you guys, but thank you for calling, all those who called. Thanks for your questions. And be sure to look at that movie if you haven't. And next Sunday, I'll be here, same time, same place. Thank you for locking on to Steelpan City. Take care.